Dobro jutro and welcome to our fourth recipe in our Slovenian month of dishes. I mentioned earlier in the month that Slovenian cuisine takes influences from many of its neighbours, and I also talked more generally about ownership of dishes and their geographic origin, and this is a very good example today of that. If I say the word goulash to you, I'm guessing you probably have two associations. One would be Hungary, the country, and one would be the idea of a rich beef stew. Now, goulash is certainly of Hungarian origin. The word goulash means herdsman or cowboy in Hungarian, but the traditional Hungarian dish generally is a much thinner broth or soup than it is a thick, rich stew. But other countries have taken and adopted the word and some of the key ingredients and made their own versions of it. If we look at other things like, for example, pancakes, if I say pancake to an American, they have a different concept to a European of what a pancake is. As we've seen earlier in the year, a British Indian curry is very different to a traditional Indian curry you would find on the subcontinent. And today is no different, because today we are going to make a Slovenian goulash. So what do we need for it? Well, some of the ingredients are common in almost all versions of goulash. So beef clearly is part of the dish. Onion occurs pretty much everywhere. Beef stock, a rich beef stock, and paprika. So pretty much all goulashes will have that. But after we get beyond those base ingredients, then it does diversify quite a bit. So what we've got today in our Slovenian goulash, in addition to the onion, is some garlic. We've got some carrot, which is pretty traditional, and some green pepper, which is also traditional, but not every version of Slovenian goulash has pepper in it, but we're going to have that. We have some oil for frying. We have some flour for thickening. We have some tomato puree for flavouring. And then for herbs, we've got some bay leaf, some mixed herbs, and I'm using some fennel seeds, which is a fairly traditional Slovenian herb, which is used in many dishes. And then the final ingredient, again, not necessarily traditional in a Slovenian version, but it can be used, is red wine. And that's another interesting word association, because the other thing often associated with Hungary is their traditional red wine, bull's blood, will be kaver. And what I've got today is some Spanish wine, but it's called sangre de toro, also bull's blood. A very different wine from Hungarian bull's blood, but bull's blood nevertheless, so we're going to add a little bit of that. So there are ingredients, fairly straightforward. Let's see what equipment we need. So today we'll need a chopping board, a knife, potato peeler, a wooden spoon, a jug, and a saucepan. Okay, so as you can probably see, this is a much more simple dish than certainly than last week's lasagna in terms of the number of ingredients. It's also very easy to prepare. It just takes quite a long time to cook. And the reason for that is the meat we're using is stewing beef or braising steak. It's a very cheap cut of beef, and it's a very flavourful cut, but it does take a lot of cooking to soften it. You could use a more expensive cut and it wouldn't take so long. You can of course use a pressure cooker to speed up cooking time. But essentially we're going to have a meal which is prepared in about 15 minutes, but will then take 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, slow cooking before the meat is tender and ready to go. So I've already chopped my vegetables, onion, peppers, carrots and garlic, just into sort of chunky pieces like that. Then I'm going to get my flour, and I'm going to season that with salt and pepper. Like that. And put the flour onto a plate. And put the beef onto the flour and just coat the beef in the flour, because the first thing we're going to do when we get to the kitchen is to fry the beef off for a few minutes, and putting the flour on them means they'll go nice and brown on the outside, which is what we want, and also they'll leave a bit of residue to thicken up the sauce for the goulash when we're ready. So basically that's our prep done. Let's head to the kitchen and start cooking. So our ingredients this week are around 600 grams of stewing beef chopped into cubes, a red onion coarsely chopped, a carrot chopped, 2 cloves of garlic chopped or sliced, 1 green pepper chopped, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a tablespoon of flour, a tablespoon of tomato puree, a tablespoon of paprika, 1 beef stock cube made up to around 200 millilitres of stock, 100 millilitres of red wine, 1 bay leaf, 1 teaspoon of mixed herbs, half a teaspoon of fennel seeds if you can get it or want it, salt and pepper. Okay, so as I said earlier, I've browned off my meat in a little olive oil, coated in the flour, cooked that in a frying pan for about 5 minutes or so, so it's got a bit of colour. And now I'm cooking off my onions and peppers and carrots. They don't need to be cooked through, just due to sealing the flavour in really. And then we add a little bit more flour. Just stir that around. And now we add our beef stock, stirring that as we go. And while I'm just stirring that to thicken slightly, a word about the paprika. Now we've got wonderful Spanish paprika here. Paprika really comes in 2 types, sweet or hot. I'm using sweet because if you use hot, you can't put that much in, and I like to have a lot of paprika, so I'm using sweet paprika. So there's no kick to the meal. If you do want a bit of heat, I suggest add a little bit of cayenne pepper or something like that, even some Tabasco, just to give it a little edge. But we're going to use sweet paprika in our version. So that's cooking round. We'll now add our bull's blood, our red wine, some tomato puree, our herbs, so we've got bay leaf, mixed herb and some fennel seed, and then all important our paprika, and I like a good generous teaspoon and a bit. Stir that all around. And then we put our beef back into the pan, and that basically is it. So what I'm going to do now is cover that, put it on a very low temperature, and that's going to cook for around 2 hours. It does depend on the cut of beef you've got. Check it every now and again that it's not sticking, but if you've got it on a very low temperature, I'm cooking on 2 for now. We'll see how we go. Just check it occasionally, stir it occasionally, and hopefully in about 2 hours you should have a ready Slovenian goulash.
Dobar večer. Izvoli. Slovenski goulash.
So I'm serving my goulash with some cornmeal polenta and of course a glass of sangre de toro, bull's blood. Na zdravje, see you soon.